Well, with Avengers Endgame being in damn near pissing distance, a bunch of YouTubers like Nando V Movies, High Top Films, Captain Midnight, and many others got together and decided to make video essays on their favorite scenes in the MCU, under the One Marvelous Scene banner. They then challenged their fans to tell them their favorite scenes and explain why. So, this is my attempt to do so, and what better movie to look for great scenes than Captain America: Civil War. This is my One Marvelous Scene. Civil War is filled with so many memorable scenes, from the airport fight to the introduction to the MCU's take on Spider-Man to the final fight between Tony, Steve, and Bucky. However, the one scene I really love and I think shows perfectly why I and many others love these movies is the scene after Steve, Bucky, and Sam get arrested and Tony is trying to convince Steve to sign the Sokovia Accords. We start with Tony trying to appeal to Steve's past.
Hey, you want to see something cool? I pulled something from Dad's archives. Timely. FDR signed a Lend-Lease bill with these in 1941. Provided support to the Allies when they needed it most.
Some would say it brought our country closer to war.
Here we are immediately shown where these characters stand and how each are going to go about trying to convince the other. While Steve is looking at things from a moral and personal point of view, Tony is trying to be more realistic and pragmatic, while still trying to appeal to Steve.
I'm trying to, what do you call it? That's an olive branch. Is that what you call it?
Is Pepper here? I didn't see her.
But Steve deflects, knowing what Tony is getting at, but not expecting the answer he gets.
We're taking a break. It's nobody's fault.
I'm so sorry, Tony. I didn't know.
A few years ago, I almost lost her, so I trashed all my suits. Then we had to mop up Hydra, and then Ultron. My fault. And then, I never stopped. Because the truth is, I don't want to stop. I don't want to lose her. I thought maybe the Accords could split the difference.
Here's where we get one of my favorite lines of dialogue in the MCU. Tony has opened up to Steve and the audience. He's finally taking responsibility for his mistakes over all these movies and is trying to be a better man, not just for himself, but for Pepper. And he truly believes the Accords are the way to go about it. He then opens up about his parents, but when Steve tries to connect with Tony through Howard, Tony snaps back.
You know, I'm glad Howard got married. I only knew him when he was young and single.
Oh, really? You two knew each other? He never mentioned that. Maybe only 1,000 times.
Showing that he still has problems he is working through, and will be working through them during the rest of his time in the MCU. Steve then tries to explain his point of view to Tony, but is rightfully called out.
If I see a situation pointed south, I can't ignore it. Sometimes I wish I could.
No, you don't.
No, I don't.
This call out from Tony plants the seeds to the audience that Steve Rogers is not perfect. He is humanized, and the idea of him not being the upstanding man that was used to sell war bonds back in World War II comes into effect later on in the movie. More specifically, in his first interactions with Zemo.
I've thought about nothing else for over a year. I studied you. I followed you. But now that you're standing here, I just realized there's a bit of green in the blue of your eyes.
And Tony's reaction to the fact that Steve knew that Bucky killed his parents.
Did you know?
I didn't know it was him.
Rogers, did you know?
Yes.
Moments like this are why I love the MCU, because these characters are flawed. Steve isn't the perfect Boy Scout, and Tony isn't someone that just cares about himself, and we see that as he constantly gives Steve reasons to sign the Accords, not for himself, but for Bucky.
We need you, Cap. So far, nothing's happened that can't be undone. If you sign, we can make the last 24 hours legit. Barnes gets transferred to an American psych center instead of a Wakandan prison.
Steve is finally starting to see Tony's side and is understanding him.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but there would have to be safeguards.
Sure. Once we put out the PR fire, these documents can be amended. I'd file a motion to have you and Wanda reinstated.
Wanda? What about Wanda?
She's fine. She's confined to the compound currently. Vision's keeping her company.
Oh, God, Tony.
Here's where everything changes. Steve immediately pulls away after hearing about Wanda. He sees Tony's methods as no better than what S.H.I.E.L.D. did back in the Winter Soldier.
We're gonna neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen.
Thought the punishment usually came after the crime.
We can't afford to wait that long.
Yeah. We compromised, sometimes in ways that made us not sleep so well. But we did it so that people could be free. This isn't freedom. This is fear.
Is that how you see this? This is protection? It's internment,
She's
Tony.
not a U.S. citizen, and they
Oh,
don't
come
grant
on,
visas
Tony.
to weapons of mass
She's
destruction.
a kid.
Give me a break!
I'm doing what has to be done to stave off something worse.
Meanwhile, here's Tony, who's just trying to keep everyone together. Trying to keep the Avengers together. Because the Avengers are his family. Throughout the movie, Tony's parents are constantly brought up, and it makes the reveal of Bucky killing them that much more impactful. But this comes into play here because Tony is trying to keep his friends together, much like his mom did with their family.
He does miss you when you're not here.
Then this is emphasized even more at the end of the movie, where we see Tony at Avengers HQ, alone. Something Tony has always feared.
You keep telling yourself that. Hate to break up the set.
And to end it off with the two pens being separated enhanced the fact that there's no turning back for either of these characters in this movie. They're not going to see eye to eye. They're not going to come back together. And this is ripple affected through Infinity War, where Tony and Steve don't even share one scene together. However, with Endgame, that's about to change. Moments like this are why I and so many others love the MCU. It's not about the action or the big effects, but the characters and their personal stories. This franchise was built off of flawed and relatable characters like Tony and Steve. This is why throughout this entire video essay, I didn't mention Iron Man or Captain America, because they aren't what this franchise is about. It's about the men behind the mask. It's about their struggles, their relationship, their lives. The way Stan Lee always wanted it.
Because while none of them were based on real people, I'm sure that every writer who writes any character is taking this character from experiences he's had, from people he's known, from other things he's read. Everything we experience is somehow stored in our mind. Even if you have a horrible memory like I do, it's still somewhere in your subconscious.
Needless to say, I can't wait to see Endgame and to have these two characters come back together after being apart for so many movies. And this scene can be marked as the beginning of the climax for the MCU. And, well, now, we're in the Endgame.